Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight's meeting is going to include a welcome by the Finance Chair, Councillor Keith Riel, followed by welcome by the council members who are in attendance, a brief presentation from the city's finance team on the 2023 budget process, an opportunity for questions and comments on the city budget, and then some wrap up and closing remarks. Before we get started, just a few quick points to go over. Please stay muted and keep your camera off until you're invited to speak. To ask a question or share a comment, please use the raise hand feature. I'll just bring up a slide here to show you how to access the raise hand feature. On your computer using Teams desktop or the web app, you can select the show reactions icon, which is a face with a hand next to it at the top of the screen. And on the menu that appears, click the raise hand icon. And if you're joining by the mobile app on your phone, tap the three dots icon at the bottom of your screen, and then on the menu that appears on your screen, tap the raise hand icon. And for any phone-in participants calling in using the phone number, please dial 5 to raise your hand, or *5, pardon me, and *5 again to lower your hand. And it's *6 to mute and *6 to unmute. Please remember to lower your hand after you've shared a comment or question, and we will try to call on people to share questions or comments in the order the hands have been raised. We ask that you please keep your questions or comments to 2 minutes or less. You can also ask a question in the chat window. We'll be monitoring that window, and we can read the questions if time allows, or the questions will be shared with council members and the city's finance team following the meeting. To turn on live captions during the meeting, click the three dots icon at the bottom of your screen for people on a computer, or at the top of your screen if you're joining by the Teams app on a smartphone, and then select Turn on Live Captions. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording of the presentation will be posted at connectptbo.ca/2023 budget. And with that, I'll introduce Councillor Keith Riel, the city's finance chair.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you for joining us today's budget consultation meeting. This is the start of the budget process. Before the city starts putting together the recommended draft budget for next year, we meet with the residents to talk about investments in services and infrastructure. Council and city staff consider the comments from residents alongside the various financial pressures, opportunities, and legislative service levels before setting the guidelines for drafting next year's budget. These meetings are one way for the residents can interact with council members and city staff. You can also call or email your board councillors. There is a survey that's available in paper. Copies are at City Hall or online at connectpeterborough.ca/2023 budget. On the city's budget engagement page at connectpeterborough.ca, you will find information on the budget process in previous budget books. After this series of more informal public budget meetings, there will be a formal meeting at City Council on June the 22nd to hear from the community before Council considers setting the guidelines for the draft 2023 budget. The draft 2023 budget is expected to be posted for public review in early December, and then there will be more opportunities for residents to share their ideas and comments before Council reviews the budget documents and considers approving the financial plan in late January 2023. Before we ask the city's finance team to give us a brief presentation, I'd like to thank Councillor Gary Baldwin, who could not join us tonight but is here in spirit, and recognize the other individual council members, and if the mayor was with them, but she could not be in attendance either, for joining us today and inviting them to say a few words. So first, the council members for Town Ward. Councillor Pappas, would you like to say a few words? And then Councillor Capel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the public who are here. And I've always said that this is where the rubber meets the road is the public budget. So it's good that the public is engaged, and we look forward to hearing your comments. To me, this meeting has always been about hearing from what the public want to say before council gets its chance. So as welcome one and all, and we look forward to hearing all of your good ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pappas, and then we'll hear from Council Kemia Capel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 budget community engagement. It feels like just yesterday we passed 2022 budget, but that's the way it goes. As Councillor Papa said, really glad to have you all here, and really this is an opportunity to hear from you. So I'll just leave my my comments here, and looking forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And with that, I invite Richard Freeman, the Commissioner of Corporate and Legislative Service, to kick us off with some information on the city's annual budget. Richard, turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just ask if you can see the screen that I have just shared here this evening.
I can see it's up.
Yep.
Thank you. And it's good to be with you this evening, and on behalf of the budget team, and this evening I have Ms. Yvette Poplinski with me. She's the Manager of Financial Services, and Mr. Bill McDougall. He's our Budget and Operations Analyst, and we're pleased to be here this evening and participate in this virtual budget roadshow. Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned in your comments, and the city's 2023 budget process is beginning, and with these virtual drop-in ward meetings and our public consultation survey that we've issued and is available online. Of course, there's numerous opportunities for the public to participate in the budget throughout the entire process, actually. And of course, after we hear from the budget during the spring and summer, staff will begin to develop the draft 2023 budget. As you mentioned in your comments, the Finance Committee will review and approve the budget guidelines in June and July. And we're hoping to have and hear from the public at a public meeting on June 22nd. And in the fall, then we will begin, or we will continue actually at a staff level to finalize the draft budget. And we're looking forward to presenting that document to Finance Committee on December 5th. And then with further detailed reviews in the new year in January, and then expecting council approval late in January of 2023. Just a couple of slides to begin this evening to help frame the discussion and to give some context as to the size of the budget. I just want to show a couple of slides in relation to the 2022 budget, actually, that Councillor Capo just mentioned a moment ago that it seems like we just passed. And the first slide here this evening is where does the city get its money from? And represented in the pie chart here this evening that I'm showing you is about $298 million of revenues that the city takes in each year. You can see a big chunk on the left, and that is a significant portion that is attributable to property taxation. And so, and it accounts for about 49% of the revenues. And so certainly property taxation is a big chunk of our budget, and having these budget consultation sessions with the public is a very important part of our process. I won't take the time this evening to go through all the other pieces here that's represented, but there's various sources of revenue that you can see here this evening, including grants from provincial and federal levels of government, such as federal and provincial gas tax. There's casino, gaming revenues that are shared. There's building permit fees. There's investment income, development charges, rental fees for various and user fees for various city facilities, and so on. Of course, to accompany this slide is a graph here that shows where do those dollars go? Where are they spent? What are they used on? And you can see here that the 2022 budget was allocated between city departments and then transfers to other organizations. And the chart here speaks to that at a very high level. Of course, much of the spending is on legislative requirements and provincial program delivery and essential services. And so where do those funds go? And when I refer to those items, well, certainly they go to various operating costs like heat and electricity and maintenance for city facilities. They go to wages for the staff to deliver the programs and services, whether it be in recreation or social services or some of the services that you see through our public works group in garbage collection or plowing roads and sidewalks, or the transit drivers, or in first responders and police and paramedics and so on. You can see here this evening in the pie chart, and if I kind of start at the top at the 12 and 1 o'clock position, you can see various city departments, starting with council and the office of the mayor, and the CAO's department, which includes communication and fire services and emergency management. Next to that, we have corporate and legislative services, and there that department includes the clerk's office and human resources, legal services, financial services, and the property taxation group. It also includes facilities and costs for infrastructure technology. Next to that, we have our infrastructure and planning services department, and that includes divisions like engineering and construction and public works, waste management, the airport, transit, planning, and building inspection. And then the large department actually that is at that about 5 o'clock position right around to the 9 o'clock is our community services. And that includes social services and our city arenas, recreation programs, and various facilities like the art gallery, the museum, and the library, and the marina. In addition to that, and the budget includes a number of transfers and payments to other organizations like police services, and some of the items that are used throughout extensively throughout in our community to make it safe and a vibrant community. Peterborough Public Health, Peterborough Economic Development, Fairhaven, Peterborough County for paramedic services, the Humane Society, the business improvement areas, and so on. If I change gears just a little bit, this next slide shows where do we spend our capital dollars? And it's an important slide because it very much shows the investment that this council is making in cities' infrastructure. And that's important for the health and state of well-being in terms of our roads and bridge infrastructure, our storm and sanitary sewers, our network of roads and purchases of major pieces of equipment, and all of that's represented in that big chunk of green that's shown on the pie chart. There's other areas here as well, and our corporate and legislative services includes items for new facilities or retrofits and maintenance on city facilities like a roof for the Healthy Planet Arena or a new splash pad. And certainly there's other areas here as well, included in things like the CAO's office for fire trucks or police for new vehicles and so on. Mr. Chairman, as I begin to contemplate the 2023 budget, and I know that that's the focus of our conversation here this evening, as we begin to give thought to the budget and the task before us, there's many items to consider, and certainly the priorities in the community are very important, and what this conversation is all about this evening. We of course don't want to lose sight of the legislative program requirements and the demands for services on city infrastructure, and of course then the real work begins in terms of how do we balance the wants and needs in the community and making it all affordable for the taxpayers. So that's the challenge before us this evening. And as we begin to contemplate that, there's a few items, of course, every year that kind of bubble up to the surface in terms of considerations and priorities and costs that we need to keep our eye on. And I just want to bring to the folks participating tonight, I just want to bring a few of those to your attention. The first, of course, is continuing to invest in our infrastructure, and I know that this present council has made that a key priority recently, and have amended our capital financing policy this not too long ago. That policy allows for up to a maximum increase of 1% as a further investment to support our capital program. Certainly, as we contemplate 2023, we'd like to once again be in a position where we could make those investments, and certainly we'd like to hopefully recommend at least a 0.5% increase for new investments into our city infrastructure. Of course, we all know what's happening at the pump when we go to fill up our vehicles. And I know that Council continues to make inroads and investing in alternative fuels. And I know that Council's considering a report actually this month, actually, from staff that would see us implement a number of, electrical vehicle charging stations. And as we continue to make those investments, though, that all takes time. And in the meantime, we do have to continue to operate the fleet of vehicles and our buses and so on. So we are impacted by what's happening, at the pump. And as we consider what's the increase in the escalation that we've seen in the last few months, and how that applies as we consider what's happening in thinking out, forecasting towards our 2023 budget, we estimate that impact at about $1 million. It's very significant. And I show here in the slide, just as a rule of thumb, what does it mean when just the liter, the price per liter of fuel even goes up 1 penny? Well, that 1 penny, bringing it back to the city's budget means roughly about $30,000 impact to our budget from a financial perspective. So a very significant impact. Certainly, as and I know that the members of council on our participating here tonight will be familiar with this one. We've seen some pretty significant cost escalations in the last couple of years with the city's insurance costs. And just like whether it's your home policy or a vehicle policy, the city's insurance costs are also escalating. And in the last couple of years, we've seen substantial increases. And as we've talked with our broker, as we've done, taken all the steps we can to mitigate what is that increase, we're, heads up, they're saying to us, possibly a further 20% increase yet again. And so a very substantial impact and we're estimating, even at this early preliminary stage, about $465,000 impact on the operating budget. Mr. Chairman, as I kind of wrap up my comments, I'd be remiss if I didn't point folks on our virtual roadshow here this evening, if I didn't point them towards the city's website. There's all kinds of information available on the city's website about the budget process. Of course, you can see lots of key information, and as information becomes available, we will update the web page. And you can certainly see, whether it's past budget books or other information about budget consultations, financial information. You can drill right down to and see some very detailed information, including even, where does my tax dollars go, and bring it right down to the very services that are provided. And so you can take your assessment residential property assessment bill, and you can translate that into what am I paying for very specific services. And then lastly, before I close, I would be remiss if I didn't point people towards the 2023 budget survey. It's available online and will be yet for another few weeks. Please take the opportunity to complete the survey, and we want to hear from you. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you this evening, or to Brendan, I guess, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'll hand it over to Brendan.
Thank you. Now we're in the questions portion of the meeting. So for anyone who would like to ask a question about the 2023 budget process, we invite you to raise your hand or to put your question in the chat. For anyone who's joining us by phone tonight, if you can use *5 to raise your hand and *5 to lower your hand, and it's *6 to mute and *6 to unmute. Not seeing any questions off the bat, Mr. Chair. Do you want to kick us off with with a commonly asked question? Oh,
yeah. I see somebody has their hand up, so I'll let them go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Jamis and Derek. You can please unmute.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the presentation and the details. I know this is very preliminary. How does our city compare on increases with other municipalities of a similar size?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to jump in and answer that, and certainly I'll look to yourself or others that perhaps might want to supplement my comments. And Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that the increases that the city passes or has passed here historically in the last number of years is very much in line, and in a lot of cases lower than taxes, property taxation. I think that of course there's always some outliers, or we could always point to a municipality in another part of Ontario that might have lower increases. I know that it's difficult to compare one municipality to the other, and I'll tell you why. And that is, we're all influenced by geography. We're all influenced differently by weather. So whether you're comparing to like a northern municipality or a southern municipality, and sometimes we're comparing to municipalities that are at different levels of government. And what I mean by that is sometimes they're regional municipalities or upper tier municipalities or lower tier municipalities. And the city of Peterborough is a single tier municipality. And I make that distinction because a single tier municipality has all of the services that much larger municipalities have. For instance, we have paramedic services that we pay for. We have sanitary sewer. We have storm sewer networks, and not all municipalities would have some of those elements in their budget. So it's difficult to compare one municipality to another. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to others, perhaps if they would have any additional input. Thank you.
I think it's a really good question from Janice, and certainly as we're going to go into election, we get this at the door, why is my taxes so high? And I asked them, I said, well, what services, and tell them about the services that the city offers. And I think ambulance service, is a huge cost for us. But I said, what services do you want cut? You don't want your garbage picked up, or you don't want your roads cleared, or they don't want them. So there's two things. And I guess the world that I come from, the easiest way for somebody to balance their books was to lay people off. So if you reduce services that people are accustomed to in the city, that means laying staff off. And one of the major costs of our budget is certainly our people that we hire. We're one of the major employers in the area, but we also we have a suite of services that we're supplying, and there's a cost to that. And then there's the other one. A lot of people, and certainly not because they've moved in from Toronto, expect some of the amenities that a larger city offers. And I said, well, you're comparing a city of 82,000 to a city of 3 million, but you want the same amenities that they have in Toronto. Well, that all costs money. And so we're trying to do the best we can with the dollars we have to provide the services that we think that you need, and certainly try to keep that number as comfortable. I'm a taxpayer the same as everybody else. So I'm very cognizant, and on a fixed income. So I'm very cognizant of the number of what the percentage is for the tax increase. So I hope that, I don't know if any of the other councillors would like to jump in here on that question, either Councillor Pappas or Councillor Capel, or some of our staff that's with us, Bill McDougall or Yvette Poplinsky. So
Mr. Chair, too, I think the one distinction too that I think Mr. Freeman needs to talk about a bit more is the mix too, like the number of industrial taxes that come from our industrial or commercial sectors and our residential sectors. I know it's not an easy question to answer because each sector has its own base and its own kind of levy, which works against it. We have the 3 different tax rates: the residential, the commercial, and the industrial as well, and they all provide income. So each city has a little different mix of that. And in the city of Peterborough over the last, I want to say 8 years, Mr. Freeman can correct me if he wants, we've endeavored to realign our tax rates with other municipalities as far as what we're charging for industrial and commercial and residential as it compares. I think it's 8 years, Richard, or is it 10? Sorry, that we were doing that realignment on our tax rates between our classes.
Councillor Pappas, you're absolutely right. It's every bit of 8 years, I believe. And to your point, the commercial and industrial taxes are about 1.5% of what the residential rate is. That's and you're referred to the tax ratio reduction program, and there has been a concerted effort actually to make our commercial and industrial taxes very affordable in the city of Peterborough, and to you know, in an effort to ensure that those sectors of our economy are robust as much as possible, and they bring jobs to the city locally here. And you know, to your point about assessment, that is a key piece here. And you know, as our assessment base grows, that helps everybody, and that helps to keep those you know, tax increases hopefully you know, affordable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a question from Rob Hillman.
Yes, thanks. My question is just about something I've always never been quite clear on around what we mean when we talk about percentages in the budget. There was, well, Mr. Freeman referenced the 1% or 0.5% capital financing increase, and then I know, of course, when we get to budget deliberations, there's always the bottom line. What's the percentage increase? Is that a percent increase in the total budget in dollars? Is it a percent increase in what the average resident might pay? Is it a percent increase in, say, the per 100,000 that we looked at recently? I'm just not sure on exactly what one of those is, and especially in a time when we've got inflation in the 6 or 7% range right now, those can mean very different things. So just if you could clarify that, I'd really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the question and the opportunity to provide that clarification. And we are trying to put it into a context that is comparable. You know, go back to the question that was just asked a few moments ago, and we are expressing it as a percentage on $100,000 of assessment. And so this is not, and so even that's a little bit tricky, because it's not, you know, what is the market value or the sale price, you know, sale value of my home, but what is the assessed value? And so we use that because it's set by a third party, by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. So it's a third party that establishes what is that assessment. And we express it as an all-inclusive percentage increase. When I say all-inclusive, that refers to, you know, the residential taxes, sanitary sewer, I believe stormwater protection fee, and sanitary sewer. So all of those elements are what we call that all-inclusive, and we're expressing it as a percentage increase on 100,000 assessment dollars. So hopefully that provides the answer to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
1% tax increase, is it about 1.5 million, 1.6 million in cash?
Mr. Chairman, it's this in 2022, it was a bit over 1.8 million. And if we're ballparking it for 2023, it's going to be about 1.9 million. So what that means is if we wanted to, you know, if we wanted to decrease taxes by 1%, we'd have to take out 1.9 million tax dollars out of the budget. So tax funded program dollars out of the budget. I'd like to put that in perspective, about 1.9 million.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a question from Scott Donovan.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I hope that you can hear me okay. I'd like to direct this question to the chair, Councillor Riel. It's a two-part question. Really, the first part is I'm wondering kind of what part of the budget is based on priorities that are set by council, maybe discussed by council, and what part of it is, basically stuff that rolls over from year to year, kind of maybe with marginal increases accounted for. And the second part of my question, just to be more specific, because I'm wondering really what kind of, if any, conversations happen at council. If there were any visioning, what part might be addressed to either climate change mitigation or actions around climate change, considering that we may be able to predict changes, from the business as usual model, which is what I expect a lot of budgets, work that way. What worked for us last year will work again. And so I'm just kind of wondering if those kind of conversations happen, and have there been any in terms of priority setting, and if so, is any of that shaped around things that we might anticipate with respect to the kind of uncertainty that we face in the future moving forward?
Thank you very much for your question, Scott. I will try to answer the first part of it, and I'll get Mr. Freeman or Yvette or Bill to chime in. Right off the bat, we have roughly, I think, I'm probably going to get the number wrong, but probably close to 1,600, maybe well over 1,000 employees, which we have to pay wages, pensions, and benefits to. And so that right off the bat is one of the drivers of the percentage increase for taxes. And then out of that, Mr. Freeman talked about the 1% for capital projects. We have over $1 billion worth of infrastructure that has to be fixed in the city of Peterborough. And we're lagging behind. We're no different than any other city, and we're lagging behind on that. And so try to get our grapple around that, but then try to find a comfortable number that people were very cognizant of COVID-19. We're very cognizant of the unemployment rate in the city of Peterborough. City Council is very cognizant of, we have a seniors population that are on fixed income. So how do we move the city forward, and what is a comfortable number that we think that we can continue doing the things that we need to do the city, provide the services that we have for our constituents, but a number that we feel comfortable with doing all of those things. I think there's conversations with all of council. We're very cognizant of climate. Certainly we've passed a number of bylaws, and certainly we've tried to instill in our staff that they think about there's a lens of the environment and everything that we do. And so we try to impress upon our building and planning, and certainly our infrastructure people, that they think about the climate. And certainly some of the builds that we do, and certainly we pass that along to the developers, that we'd like to see a subdivision that's a complete community and have an environmental lens on it. And hopefully we can continue doing that. But also we have to be mindful that we have developers that want to invest in the city. And so it's kind of every development we have a wish list, but we try to get as much as we possibly can, mindful that they have to be in business and have to make money at what they're doing. But certainly we do that along. So maybe, Mr. Freeman, you would like to talk about just the money that has to be spent just on our employment side for wages, pensions, and benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly will do that. And thank you, Mr. Donovan, for your question. If I could just supplement and provide a bit more specific information as well about the climate change funds and the investments made in climate change in the 2022 budget. And so Councillor Capel earlier in the meeting referred to that, it just seems that we passed the 2022 budget not too long ago. And so the operating budget included a number of items and over $400,000 of items for climate change reserve funding, and everything from climate change action plan projects or sustainability projects, funding for a climate change coordinator. And that was in the operating budget, but then also in the capital budget, there is a number of projects that get, are directly funded that help reduce climate change, impacts of climate change. And so we actually identified them in our budget book, and I'll just make a reference here, and I'd be happy to follow up with a link on how to find it. But in our budget highlights book, and I point out that book because we try to bring everything kind of into one spot. So when we talk about climate change, oftentimes, our investments in climate mitigation are scattered throughout the budget, and we, in the overview section at the beginning of that book, we had a number of pages that talked about, when we pull it all together, what does it look like? And so it identified a number of the capital projects where there was either a climate mitigation aspect or a climate adaptation aspect to the project that would help address our climate change and impacts of climate change. Certainly to Councillor Rial and to provide a bit more visibility into investments for staff, and in terms of just the impact that has in terms of the number of staff for the various programs and services. Staff wages, I believe, account for somewhere probably around $85 million in wages and benefits that are paid out across the corporation. And so it is a fairly substantial number. And of course, many of those programs and services are legislated. And so they're, as much as we want to hear about, and we do reflect, community priorities in our budget, we also have legislative requirements that we must meet. So we need to keep both of those things in sight. So hopefully that provides a bit of insight into to assist in answering your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next question is from Janice.
Thank you very much. I'm really enjoying this discussion. It's so informative, and I can only imagine the challenge of trying to, put out this budget and every year try to look at where you can save money and where the cost increases are. It's very informative. One of the things I was thinking about is, and we haven't really talked about it, is balancing the budget. I don't know the debt of the city. I mean, I know that, it's under your stewardship. And I guess the question I have is it ever realistic to balance the budget here? Because I guess I'm thinking of my own finances. As soon as I don't have debt to pay, I can just start building, and, and I know cost reductions could come from that, tax reductions could come from that. So I'm just trying to equate it to my own world, even though I know that's very micro. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that, because I know if we could achieve that in some way, then maybe tax decreases are possible one day.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take a crack at that, and I'll look to you to help supplement my comments.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Thanks, Janice, and for your question. And it's a very important question because unlike the provincial or federal levels of government, those senior levels of government, the city is not a sovereign government. And that, in other words, we can't run a deficit. By law, we have to balance the books. And so, whereas we often take in the budget presentation and budget speeches at those senior levels of government, and they talk about deficit spending. Well, we don't have that luxury. We have to balance the books by provincial legislation. And however, so for every dollar that I spend, I have to have $1 of revenue to offset it, so that the bottom line is zero. And so, but to your point, that doesn't mean that we're not without debt. And so how do we handle debt? So it's very much like buying a home or buying a vehicle, those major purchases that we make at a personal level. We have to incur debt in order to move forward to make that acquisition. And the city of Peterborough, even though it's on a bigger scale than that, the concepts are very similar. And that is that when the city and when we move forward with major capital works and make those investments in infrastructure, we have to ensure that at the end of the day, that we can meet the principal and interest payments, and we can do what we call service the debt. We can make those payments. And so we use the revenues then to make those, sequential payments until the debt would be expired. So to your point, we do have, and perhaps I would look to Ms. Poplinski or to Mr. McDougall to help me out with a number. We do have debt on the books in terms of debt issued and or committed to be issued. And so as we move forward with those payments, it is manageable. We have certain thresholds established by the province that we must operate within. We're well within the guidelines, and in fact, we have other third parties that weigh in with whether or not they think that we are credit worthy. So Standard & Poor's every year rate the city of Peterborough, and they weigh in with what they establish in terms of our credit rating. And right now we enjoy a AA credit rating with a stable outlook. And to put that into perspective, that's a very, very good rating for a municipality our size. We will probably never be a AAA municipality like a GTA, a Greater Toronto Area municipality. We're simply not that big. But having said that, a AA rated municipality is a very strong municipality financially. And they would suggest that our debt ratings or debt levels are very manageable. So I think, and Mr. McDougall just sent me a chat message. Debt issued and debt committed to be issued is about $276 million, which sounds like a big number, but yet in the big scheme of things, in terms of the city's budget and our ability to service that debt, that is all very manageable and well within the limits established both by the province and then even by council, which provides even a more stringent level of debt issuance. We are once again even within that more stringent criteria set locally by council. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next question is from Nicola.
Hi there. I actually don't have a question. I just have some ideas about the budget. Would now be an appropriate time to share?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so I just wanted to raise some concerns actually. I read an article in the Examiner that kind of detailed that the Peterborough Police Services Board was looking to increase their budget to hire 49 new employees. So asking for about like a 1.6% increase on the overall budget. And I do realize that the budget usually does increase a bit just due to inflation, or sorry, I guess cost of living, I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess I'm concerned because already the budget is about 27 million annually. So it's already the most expensive single service that's funded by the city. So I think this is like an astronomical budget. And in the article that I was reading, it also described that because mental health calls are on the rise and there are fewer people than needed to respond to calls, this was one of the reasons they're asking for this increase in resources. And it's also kind of, in some of the job titles that it alludes to this being sort of why they want this extra funding. So I just believe that this is, these resources going to the Peterborough Police Services won't actually work to support people, experiencing these mental health issues or who are experiencing homelessness, but will actually be unhelpful. It's not a sustainable solution, and it will actually end up criminalizing these people. So I just think it's really important, that our city addresses the housing crisis, of course, the drug overdose crisis, and support all residents with their mental health. And there's so many great services that do this, but I do think it's important that we do this by increasing the resources towards the organizations who are qualified and who are experienced in addressing these issues, and not towards the police who do not have the experience or training to deal with these issues, let alone in a sustainable way. So I just want to give some examples. I know the John Howard Society offers community mediation, but it's an extremely under-resourced program. Likewise, Kawartha Sexual Assault Center supports people with free counseling services. And yeah, there's just so many great organizations in our city, including PARN doing harm reduction work, One City Peterborough, Yes Shelter. And I just think it's really important that the resources that our city has be directed to support these organizations who are working with people. And yeah, like I said, have the experience and the qualifications, and not to the Peterborough Police Services. So yeah, just as an example, I want to bring up the Permission to Survive petition that has recently been launched, and they describe criminalization as the action of turning someone into a criminal by making their activities illegal. And they say this is what we're doing to individuals living in poverty. And I think that's such an important point. And I'm afraid that this is what the Peterborough Police Services have done in the past, you know, with the evictions from the tent city, and what they will continue to do. So I think this is just, you know, a really clear example where we have the opportunity, you know, in setting this budget to set our priorities straight, and ensuring that the police budget is actually reduced and we can increase the funding for social services in a way that will actually work to address the housing crisis, unemployment, and mental health crisis in our city. So yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's really great that we have this forum to discuss. And I really hope that, yeah, my concerns are reflected in the budget. And I hope that others on the call also, yeah, kind of understand where I'm coming from. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nicola. I mean, I guess I'll start, and I have my counterparts here. For the 12 years that I've been on council, and certainly previous councils, this is an extremely caring community. And certainly I think all of us on council, and certainly myself, are very cognizant of certainly what's happening in our community and what's happening downtown. And I think that we have tried our level best through our social services division, and certainly police play a part, our paramedics, certainly our fire department, and certainly the agencies that you talked about, Nicole, to try and grapple with the problem of homelessness, marginalized, and certainly low-income people. And certainly, like I said, we're very cognizant of what's happening. We have the safe injection site that's supposedly coming online. We're trying desperately, Councillor Clark and myself as chair of housing, to get housing built, because it's a crisis not here in Peterborough, but across Canada, in Ontario, and North America. And we understand that we don't want people living in tents and living rough. We're trying to find housing for everybody. Good news, because of COVID, we had to reduce our hours at our shelter system. And certainly that's coming back online, that we're opening more places for people to go. I'm not saying that the shelter system is the Holiday Inn, but it's a roof and a warm place, or a cool place in the summer for somebody to go. We're providing meals for people every day. And like I said, this is a very, very caring community. We're trying our level best to do it. The police play a role, and certainly, but any budget items, and certainly I think that the councils we've been on, there's been some pushback from us when they've asked for, if they have any money left over, that it's used wisely, or we've taken it back. So we look at their budgets all the time, and certainly legislated, do they have to have so many uniform officers under the Police Act? So we work with them, and certainly I hear what you say tonight. I don't know if anybody else, either Councillor Acapo, or certainly Deputy Mayor Acapo, or certainly Councillor Pampas would like to say anything, but I find this a very caring community. I know myself, I'm chair of social services, very cognizant of what's going on in our community, and want to help as many people as we possibly can. And I think that's as shown by the years that I've sat on council, and certainly previous councils, and the community as a whole, helps these less fortunate people. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Great or I guess comment rather than question. I really appreciate that, and I can certainly understand where you're coming from. And on the whole, I agree with you. The police have a job to do, but unfortunately, most of the job that they're doing now is not related to what they're actually supposed to be doing. And personally, I've spoken to this before in open session, but I do believe that there's other better ways of supporting the community that isn't policing. The issue that we have now, though, is that we don't have another sort of entity that can help address a single entity that can address some of the issues. You listed a number of organizations who are doing great work, and I support the work that they're doing. But we sort of need to create something else before we can stop providing funding to the police or reduce the level of funding that they get. And part of that's not something that we as a municipality can do alone. As I'm sure you're aware, the Police Services Act is a provincial one, and legally we are mandated by the province to provide funding for them, so we can't not fund them. And if we did, they would essentially just bypass us and get the funding anyways. So there's a couple of things that need to be done before we can sort of remove ourselves from being sort of a police. I don't want to say police state because I don't think we're a police state, but remove ourselves from the situation that we're in. We don't vote on the budget till later on in the year, and before that is a municipal election. So the three of us that are on this call may not be around at that point. So I would encourage you to speak to council during that time as well and echo the comments that you've just made, and certainly work with the province as well to see what other supports can be put in place. And to Peterborough Police's credit, they also recognize that they are not the ones that should be dealing with these issues, and they've been trying for years. Particularly the current acting chief has been trying for years to find other ways to support the community that isn't someone with a gun and a badge. And to their credit, they've applied for funding for different positions, have been really supportive of some of the non-punitive ways of trying to support our residents. So that was just a very long way of saying I see you and I hear you and I appreciate what you have to say. Again, I encourage you to speak to the council after the election and to remind them of what you just said. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
We have a question from Janice again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I respond?
Oh,
as well?
sure. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Nicola. As always, I know that this is a passionate issue for you, and I appreciate all of your input and your passion on this. And your numbers are pretty well bang on. 26,966,000 was last year's budget of the police, and the net tax levy was 24,195,000. So you're pretty close on your numbers, and you should know that last year we moved and we passed. Chris Riel and I worked on this one. That we used the police surplus to fund crisis intervention teams to get out in the community and help better deal with issues as they arrive. And I believe that report's due in the May cycle. And that's something that'll put, kind of boots on the ground right now, having more of these crisis teams out in the community. We need 4 of them, and I believe we have funding for 2. We've applied to the province for 1, and hopefully the feds will come up with the funding on the 4th team. So, anyways, that's kind of an update in a nutshell. We have spoken about this as in the past, and you're always free to kind of reach out. So thank you again.
Janice?
Thank you, Councillor Rial. Just piggybacking a little bit off what Nicola was saying. I was just really, I mean, this is a very rudimentary understanding of a city budget. I don't profess to know budgets or understand them. You know, what I'm really thinking in my mind is that the biggest opportunity in the city are for any kind of control over tax increases is really the wages of the city. I know that's difficult because I'm speaking to a lot of people who work very hard here that work for the city. But I really believe that that's where a lot of the attention needs to go. When I heard that a massive component of that budget is allocated towards those resources. And yes, of course, some of those are essential. And I don't ever want to imply that people aren't doing a great job. It's just, I think the reality is that that's not going to stop increasing. And that's just where the budget savings really need to be looked at. I think it's time for the city to really look at that. And then, you know, what I'm also thinking is that, you know, what I heard is that one of the critical pieces that can help us and not burden the residents with tax increases that, to your point, Councillor Rial, like, people are on fixed incomes, right? It's just going to get more and more difficult with inflation creeping up as well. So I'm thinking that a big part of what we need to focus on is actually outside of this budget, which is job creation in the city. I know, of course, there's a lot of effort that goes into that, but I just feel without job creation that the city is just going to be, you know, I know it's rather dramatic to say this, but dying a kind of a slow death in some ways, because like even what you said was that you reduce the budget for those really important industrial and commercial taxpayers because they need to be stimulated, but we need bigger, more taxpayers in the city. And I think another interesting point that came to my mind as well is when I heard you speak specifically at with my first question about being on par and with other municipalities, but we also have some differences. And so I'm wondering the salaries as well. Should the salaries of the city be on par with the rest of the province, right? So if our city can't handle salaries that are being evaluated with other cities that are not like cities, why would we do that? We should be having our own rubric based on what the needs of our city. So I know I've put a lot out there. I'm just trying to piece together everything I've heard tonight. So thank you for letting me speak to that.
Richard, I don't know if you want to field that or not. I see Kemi's hand up, but I'll go to Richard first and then
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll take a stab at trying to address some of that, and I certainly hear, you know, what Janice is saying, and appreciate your comments, Janice, and I know that it's important to have qualified staff, you know, working for the city of Peterborough, and the city provides a lot of important services to the residents here in Peterborough, and along with that, you know, comes very niche skill sets that they must have, or certifications. So whether it would be, you know, engineering inspectors or building inspectors or folks who work at our wastewater treatment plant, for instance, just to name a few, you know, they are very skilled individuals, and with that must have, by virtue of their role, you know, the appropriate qualifications behind them. And it's kind of like, you know, and I know we mentioned police services and the skills that they need to have to deal with the, you know, the issues that they are confronted with. But it's the same with our firefighters. You know, so not sure if I can help you out a whole lot there. I know it is a key part of our budget, but yet on many fronts it's the staff who are providing the services, you know, that the community enjoys, you know, and regardless of whether it's some of those more hard infrastructure items like, you know, building services or wastewater treatment plant or fire, but services for in our public arenas or at our library. You know, we want a robust library. We want a robust arenas in our community, and those services are provided by by the staff that work in those facilities. So with that, I'll turn it over to Councillor Capo. She probably has much better insights than I. Thank you.
I very much doubt that my insights are better than yours, Richard, when it comes to the budget, but I appreciate that. And I want to echo what Richard just said. You know, I do appreciate the comment, and I feel like I have to somewhat go to bat for our staff here, because I comparatively to some other municipalities our size, yes, it might seem, you know, like we have a lot of staff, but I actually think we're understaffed at the municipality. And a lot of projects that you know, we want to work on, you know, we got to create operational plans. And sometimes, you know, things happen and we're not able to get to things. And the staff that we do have do an incredible amount of work. And they put in a lot of hours to put in a lot of work. And, you know, they have visions too of what they'd like to be able to do. But just simply because we are short-staffed, in my opinion, we're just not able to get to everything. And yeah, if you want services, you need people to deliver those services. And I know we recently, being in the last couple of years, did hire an agency called KPMG to sort of look through everything to see where we could, you know, cut some costs and you know, make our budgets a little bit leaner. And some of the advice that they gave, you know, we did take, and others, you know, we said no to. But I, you know, just speaking for myself, you can be rest assured that the staff and complement that we have is absolutely necessary, in my opinion. And there's no department that's sort of just like ballooned with people who are just sort of sitting around and not doing their work. And again, if you want things to be done, you need staff to deliver that. And I also believe in paying people fairly. You know, we talk about a living wage. We talk about being able to compensate people enough for the work that they do, that they can live a good life. And I think we as a municipality should take leadership on that. And you know, and finally, you know, I don't want to get too much into this, but you know, our staff is unionized as well. So we as council can't just go in and say like, yeah, we're gonna reduce wages. That would I pity the council that tries to do that. That would throw us into a whole legal whack-a-mole that I don't want to get into. So I appreciate your comments, Janice, and certainly I take them to heart. But I will say that I think our municipality, I think, is understaffed actually. But the level of staff that we have does provide an excellent amount of service for the amount of time that they have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Capo. I just wanted to say thank you both for your response. You know, and I know that becoming a region is maybe where we need to go, because that's the other thing I'm thinking through too, because of course that comes with, you know, the reduction of duplication of services. And there's a whole host of other things that come into play around that. But it's obvious that something has to change. So whether we go and become partners with other municipalities, counties, etc. I mean, I don't presume to know who's doing which job at City Hall, and I trust that everybody's doing what they can. I think my other comment is really important as well around job creation, because it's out of this budget. But I think that that's where, you know, if we can do that, that's where we're going to get a lot of tax revenue from as well.
Yes, and sorry, I did mean to speak on that and I forgot, but yes, you're absolutely right. You know, we do work with Peterborough Economic Development in terms of job creation, the Workforce Development Board. There's lots of agencies in town, and the city itself also works on that as well. So 100% agree with you. And I also agree with you in terms of trying to look at things that are from a more regional perspective, because I think that's where we're headed. And whether we may like it or not, but thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pappas, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question and your engagement. We do appreciate it. And you know, it is complicated. You're right. Jobs are very important. You know, we do have one of the highest taxes paid our size. If you look at the WOA.ca taxes website, which is a real estate one, and compares the city of Peterborough to other municipalities on what we're paying. But jobs are important, and I think the investment we've made in the airport and in Clean Tech Common show that we're serious about trying to get high-tech jobs to Peterborough, because the old smoke tech jobs are gone, and they may not come back as we knew them. I was just at a conference that talked about the effects of the pandemic on the economy, and one of the big effects was that globalization might have gone a little too far, and the disruption in the supply chain has really illustrated that maybe countries need to start having a little more reserved capacity on the supply chain side within our own borders to help deal with some of those supply chain issues. So jobs, you're absolutely right. And we need another industrial park. The Clean Tech Commons is the kind of high-tech, clean jobs that we're trying to forge through there. But we are also out of industrial land, and we do need some more of that. And I know that this council has tried to meet with our neighbors, and I think it's going to be a provincial response at some point to kind of help deal with our landlocked issues. So that is one of our issues, is that we are quite low on industrial land. We have Clean Tech Common, which is the traditional lands, but we do need that kind of swath of 250 acres off cap so that we can move our city forward with the jobs, and that will balance out against the amount of taxes that the individual homeowner is paying, which is just in this term of council, it's gone up roughly $519 just in this term of council, just to keep up with it. So anyways, thank you for your question, and I appreciate all of the input.
Thank you. I think we've come to the end of our meeting. I'll turn it back over to Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's back over to you for any closing remarks.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. The recording of this presentation will be posted on the budget engagement page at connectpeterborough.ca/2023 budget for the people to watch when it's convenient for them. We have one more of these informal meetings scheduled over the next week. Well, the next one will be North Crest, and it'll be on Thursday, April 28th at 6 o'clock. The formal meeting of the 2023 budget will be on June the 22nd before council considers setting the guidelines for the draft and recommended 2023 budget. This is just the start of the 2023 budget process. The draft budget is expected to be released for public review on December the 5th, 2022, with more public meetings in January of 2023 before budget considers approving the plan in late January 2023. We have two council members with us tonight. Do you want I will turn to Councillor Capel and then Councillor Pappas for any remarks that they would like to say before we close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Certainly had a better turnout than we had last year. So I'm glad to see that. And please do continue to stay engaged throughout the process. There'll be several more opportunities for input. So please don't forget to do that. And as I mentioned, there is an election coming up. So make sure you sort of keep tabs on what's happening after the election. And speak to your counselors then as well, and continue to stay engaged. Thank you all.
Councillor Pappas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank staff. I know that they work hard on these presentations, and they are whittling away at the budget all year long. So I do want to thank them for all their work here as well. And I do want to thank all of the participants who logged in tonight, and because that's what it's all about. It's not about us. It's about listening to you and getting input. So we do appreciate that. Thank you.
If you haven't done so already, please fill out the budget survey at connectpeterborough.ca/2023 budget. With that, thank you, and thank you for being with us tonight, and certainly the people that attended and the questions you asked. And so next week again, we will have, and this is just not North Crest, but it is North Crest Ward. But if anybody else would like to join, next Thursday, 6 o'clock, North Crest, same time. So with that, thank you very much and good night.
Thanks, everybody.